Morning Upper 6th. So this is video 2 of the 50 mark 60-minute paper. First videos focused on the 8 and the 10 and giving an overview of the case study. This video will focus on the 12 and 20. So if you've not watched the other video, watch the other video first because it puts the whole thing into context. But we have answered these two questions. We've drawn our supply and demand. We've talked about forecasting. We're moving on to more forecasting, obviously with 1C. And here we've been talking about seasonality and national living wage. So moving on. We're going on to our 12 marker. So again, we see using the data in extracts A and B. I'm looking at A and B here. I've got some numbers down here that I could do some calculations with. Assess the likely value. Obviously, this is the start of our hook. Of sales forecasting, I'm going to put a K next to that because I need to define that at the beginning of my answer, to help Next achieve their £1 billion profit target for 2024. So we've done quite a lot on profit targets. We also need to understand what profits are made of, and we've talked about that in the previous video. And so our hook is value of sales forecasting to helping them achieve their profit target. Okay, so we've got something there that we can actually write. Okay, so we're going to have to define, to start off with, excuse the red line, sales forecasting is the process of estimating future sales. At least it's defined, it's not in context. There'll be loads of context throughout the rest of the answer, hopefully. But at least we are going to be talking about estimation. The word forecast, estimation, makes me think of questioning reliability of data. And clearly I need to question the reliability of the data. This estimating future sales will be based on previous sales, which are highlighted in extract B. And we can see that they've had pretty good sales. Yeah, this is really good growth in profitability, for example. And we've got a growth in sales there as well. Okay, now they're expecting it to dip in 2023. So that is also part of the story about sales forecasting. Sales forecasting is valuable. So we're talking about value up here. Let's talk about value down here for resource allocation. This is my point, obviously. Next uses sales forecasting to plan its recruitment, especially during peak seasons. We've had this in a previous question, remember? So we're already using some of the benefits of writing the questions in order to plan, everything in bold as a chain of argument, the mix of full-time, part-time and seasonal roles, leading to optimized staffing that aligns with customer demand in shops, giving us more context. Therefore, sales forecasting is vital for Next to manage costs, we've mentioned the cost, which is the staffing, whilst maintaining service quality. As per extract A, Next employs a diverse mix of employment contracts, likely guided by sales forecasts. So I'm not just going to say a diverse employment contract. I've already got that up here really. I've just linked that quote into sales forecasting just to make it absolutely obvious. However, question reliability of the data. Relying too heavily on forecasts might lead to mismatches between staffing and actual demand. Remember, up here is about staffing linked to sales forecasting. Down here it needs to be about staffing. Extract A implies the importance of flexibility, noting that students provide the necessary workforce elasticity. Okay? If it wasn't necessary, they would be really, really sure that their forecasts are accurate. They need that flexibility because, let's face it, forecasting are an estimate. It's a good guess. They can't tell the future. Accurate sales forecasts are valuable for setting and tracking financial targets. It's my point. Because these forecasts allow Next to plan for growth or reduce demand. Okay? Planning for growth or they're planning for reduced demand. Now, this is in context. We've already got application here because of the lower profit forecast for 2023, leading to informed strategic financial decisions. Therefore, forecasting is a cornerstone of Next's approach to hitting its £1 billion profit target in the question. The increase in profit before tax from 823 2021 to 70.4 in 2003, as mentioned in Extract B, demonstrates the practical application of sales forecasting to achieve these figures. It was sort of left hanging there, but why? Yeah, when I first wrote this, it actually ended there. I thought, well, that doesn't quite link into forecasting enough. It just says that it does, but I've not explained it. It's an assertion, and we want to avoid level 2 assertions. Next would need enough stock to sell. Now it's linked back to forecasting, because if I'm forecasting my sales, that actually informs how much stock I'm going to purchase. Half of their stock, more than half, is made in the Far East, which means the lead times for that is months and months, not days and days. Sales forecasting is very, very important. However, forecasts are not foolproof. Extract B shows that despite robust forecasting, Next still forecasts a slight decrease in full price sales in 2023, reflecting the uncertainties of forecasting. Again, this bit here is an interpretation of the data. It gives us another chain of argument. We're way over 5 because we've contextualised everything. And if you interpret the data and don't just quote it, it normally gives you another chain of argument and, let's face it, lots of analysis marks. Overall, quickly go back and check the question. So, value of this to this. Overall, sales forecasting is of immense value, interesting word, but never mind, to Next as it pursues its £1 billion profit target. Okay, so it's answered the question. It's not in context because, we know that the £1 billion profit target is in the question, but at least it answers the question. Let's have a justification. Now, with this one, we can get away with saying things like without. Okay, without such forecasting, where when we were looking at the national living wage, we can't say without the increases in national living wage. Well, let's face it, they're there. You can't recreate reality. But with this one, we could just choose not to do forecasting. Be a bit silly, but we could do it. Without such forecasting, Next would struggle to match resources with market demands and miss opportunities or face avoidable excess costs of discounting too many clothes below full price. Okay, again, this is contextualizing the justification, and we're considering the opportunity cost. The second best opportunity for doing forecast is obviously not doing it. Then, because it's a 12 marker, if we've got time and if we can think about it in context, and if it's not in context, don't bother writing it, let's do some sort of future orientated mocks. In the future, as Next aims for a £1 billion profit target, its objectives will evolve, possibly requiring a reassessment of sales forecasts that have been underpinned by its robust financial results. So it's basically saying the data that you're basing your sales forecasts on might become out of date in the future, depending how the market changes. Okay. Now we know, because we read the news, that actually in 2023, Next didn't discount as many items. Now, when that article first came out, I was interested. I was quite interested that they hadn't done it. But now I understand the context, because the year before they predicted a dip in profits. Actually, their profits increased. Okay, I think it was 895 million or something. So actually, profits have gone up. And most of the reason they said for that was they didn't have to discount it as much. price skimming strategy, which we mentioned in the previous answer. Hopefully that's useful. That's a level 4 answer. You may have used different evidence, and that's absolutely fine. Go through your answer, underline the connectives. Have you got a counter argument that's in context? Did you answer the question? And does your justify actually justify your answer in context, or are you just repeating something you've already written? If you've had time for a MOPS, is it in context with forecasting using a little bit of evidence from the case study? Okay, write your EBIs, write your what went wells, pause the video, celebrate if you've got level 4, look at the standards, you can download the mark schemes, and then move on to the 20. Moving on to the 20, this is the question, but this is where we acknowledge that we have now read all of the case studies. Now, in the real exam, normally the last data extract is reserved for the 20 marker. However, in this case, the 20 marker will use possibly all 3 of the data extracts. Okay, slightly different skill, but if you find that your 20 marker is directly linked to the last case study and you are starting to run out of time, remember that 20 mark survival video that I did for you, where the tiny little data extract was enough to get us to level 4 and probably wrote that in about 10 minutes. Okay. However, in the real world, if you're managing your time, you will have 1.2 minutes per mark, which is 24 minutes. Couple of minutes to plan, and we'll do a quick plan when we go to the next slide. And then you're probably writing for 21 to 22 minutes. Okay, if you practice the format of these enough, you'll do it on autopilot. If you don't plan, well, I think you're planning for failure. We know that we've got 2 options, same sort of thing, so let's quickly plan this answer. In order to boost morale of its seasonal workers during peak season, Next could adopt motivational theories of, number 1, Taylor or Herzberg. Okay, I've got my 2 options. Evaluate these 2 options, recommend which one, okay, one is more likely, here's our hook, yeah, that's going to be a H of some description, to enhance the motivation of Next PLC's seasonal employees. Okay, so we've got boost morale and enhance motivation. More likely to enhance motivation of the seasonal workers during Christmas. We need to identify who these seasonal workers are. I'm going to put an AP next to that for application. We know it's at Christmas, but I want to know who these seasonal workers are. In my mind, I'm thinking part-time students and stuff like that. And the great thing is we've already talked about these in a previous answer. And we also need to make sure that when we're doing pros and cons for Taylor, we're not being lazy or getting too excited and start rambling on about Maslow, Mayo, McGregor just because we've revised them and we want the examiner to know. That was the common mistake in the 2023 paper, is people just got excited and just answered a totally different question because they didn't do this basic plan. Pro and con for Taylor, pro and con for Herzberg, answer the question choosing which one is more likely, and then justify it by bad-mouthing the one that you've not chosen. Then consider MOPS. The MOPS will be thinking about something in the future. This could be something in the future that means the one I've chosen is really good. It could be in the future something changes and maybe I will concentrate more on the one I haven't said it is most likely. Okay, so we're always going to start with a definition. Now, because we have got 2 key terms up here, and sometimes we find that the hook is also something we need to demonstrate an understanding of, but we've got motivation here, so we should be okay with 2. We've got Taylor's needs to be defined. We will do exactly the same when we come to Herzberg. So Taylor's scientific management theory focuses on enhancing efficiency through task standardization and monetary incentives. It emphasizes time studies, work planning, and piece rate pay. Okay, guess what I'm looking for in the case study? Even if I hadn't quite got to the case study yet, I would write my two definitions, or at least one of them to start off with. Then I would go to the case study. I would identify two bits of evidence, one for my P paragraph in favour of Taylor, one for my P paragraph against Taylor, two bits of evidence, and then I would start writing. Okay, we've all revised motivation theories to death. You're not going to quickly go and get yourself a textbook if you've forgotten it. So all you need is two pieces of evidence and then you write. Okay? If you see more than two, then fantastic. If you've already done maths that you could use, then maybe. And this answer, I think, could actually be improved by using some of the calculations that we've already done with the national living wage. Okay, those seasonal employees have just had a pay rise and I didn't use it. So we're then thinking about an advantage. Now, you don't need to write point advantage. This is to remind you of the structure. Taylor's theory might be beneficial in boosting productivity through incentivization. Hang on, we're talking about morale, not productivity. I really hope that this answer, doesn't go off onto a mad rant about productivity. Let's see. Because Next PLC could implement precise workloads and task management according to Taylor's principles, this may lead to enhanced productivity. Oh dear. Especially important during the Christmas peak season. The case study mentions that Next used a combination of financial and non-financial incentives to attract and retain its workforce, linked to Taylor's focus on economic incentives. Now, even though attracting and retaining could be boosting morale, enhancing motivation, the way I've just read this, I'm now putting on my Dalmatian examiner's hat, is attracting and retaining is enhancing productivity. Okay? Yes, there's a good understanding of theory here, but is it linked to the hook? And at the moment, I would answer, my answer to that is, I don't think it is. Okay? It uses the case study. I'm hoping it comes back to the hook. It's not the end of the answer at the moment, by the way. It doesn't mean it's going to fail. It just means later it needs to be directly linked into the hooks or we've got problems. To improve this paragraph, motivate incentives to motivate staff to ensure that they attract new staff and retain existing temporary workers during Christmas. That's all that needs to be changed to nail it. At the moment, not liking the answer, even though theoretically it looks okay. However, remember we don't need to write this, Taylorism might not cater for the intrinsic motivation of seasonal staff. Better. Although Taylor's approach can enhance immediate productivity, here we go, through economic incentives, it may neglect employee engagement and satisfaction beyond monetary terms. Because this theory underestimates the value of employee well-being and job satisfaction, a bit more motivation, it might lead to a workforce that is less committed and possibly more transient. They're already seasonal. Therefore, potentially affecting long-term employee relations and company reputation. Okay, so employee relations might be morale. Okay, going to give you that. We are talking about motivation beyond monetary. Company reputation. If this was a retention question, I could understand that. But again, autopilot as per the textbook. From the case study, we see that Next PLC's values, flexible scheduling appealed to students and part-time workers, which suggests, what a lovely, which could be interpreted as type of statement, a need for more holistic motivational approach than Taylor's. Okay, now That is directly linked to motivation of the workforce. And also, scheduling seems to be more important when coming up with a disadvantage. This paragraph I'm happy with. Theoretically, it's okay. It gets a bit lost, but it's not the end of the world. Up here, I would argue that the in favour of motivating people, there's not a lot of it there other than incentives to retain workforce. As we say, we could have improved that. Okay, it's a pretty good answer. It just could, that first paragraph could improve. Let's define Herzberg. Herzberg's two-factor theory highlights hygiene factors that can prevent dissatisfaction and motivators that can drive employees to perform better and find satisfaction in their work. Very textbooky. That's fine. At least we're going to talk about Herzberg, and we're not accidentally going to be talking about Herzberg's hierarchy of needs, which is one answer I've seen. People just remember Maslow and just called it Herzberg, which was fascinating. Didn't do well in the mark scheme. Herzberg approach could encourage more commitment and satisfied, more committed even, if I had the right glasses on, and satisfied seasonal workforce. Okay, satisfied is motivation. Since Next PLC's aims to provide a flexible working environment application, applying Herzberg's theory could lead to high job satisfaction and motivation, nice, by linking to the theory, ensuring that hygiene factors such as work conditions and company policies are satisfactory, and motivators such as recognition and personal growth opportunities are present. There's a bit of context in there. There's a lot of the textbook. Okay. Luckily, we can see some quotation marks later in this paragraph. At least we know it's contextualized. This could in turn result in a more engaged, okay, it's that word again, okay, engaged, maybe more motivated would be nicer, but engaged we're fine, and productive workforce, because employees might feel valued and part of the company, okay, thus potentially leading to better performance, abstract, and enhanced customer experiences during the hectic season. Okay, well, even though this is important to Next, it's not really the question, so let's hope the last sentence is linked to motivation. Training and development opportunities were also part of the non-financial incentives, which links to Herzberg's motivators. Not only is it linked to motivation, it's linked to the theory. Quite like the end of that one. Very textbook heavy, but you're going to see this with motivation theory questions because we've revised them a lot. And it weaves into so many other units. We keep revisiting them in that spiral curriculum that we talk about. Actually, you're going to see quite wordy answers. Just make sure they're contextualized. Nothing wrong with that paragraph, just a bit long really. However, Herzberg theory might be challenging to implement effectively for seasonal employees. Right back to the context of the question. Implementing Herzberg motivators might require a level of investment and continuity that is difficult to maintain in a temporary seasonal workforce. Because seasonal employees may have limited time with the company, it could lead to the company not fully reaping the benefits of such investment, thus potentially resulting in a less cost-effective approach. Not really the point of the question, but it might be that Next choose not to do it because of that. The risk with this is it goes off onto, therefore it's too expensive, so Next will choose to just give short-term monetary, so Taylor's best. That would not answer the question, so we have to go careful with that. There's a need for flexible scheduling, there's a need for flexible scheduling appeal to students and part-time workers, which might be difficult to align with more in-depth motivational strategies that require a stable and long-term presence. Okay, so it's not saying that using Herzberg is not effective. It's just saying it might be difficult to achieve this with part-time workers that will be here and gone within that short Christmas window. Okay, so it is sort of a counter-argument to Herzberg. It's basically saying, yes, it's okay, but it might be quite hard and expensive to implement. All right, I suppose. Overall, before we write our conclusion, we go back to the question. We've got two options. More likely to enhance motivation of seasonal employees at Christmas time. Herzberg's two-factor theory appears to be the most likely to be effective in motivating seasonal employees during the Christmas peak season. We've answered the question, okay, which is good, because at this stage, sometimes students forget what the question is and they answer something totally different. And that's why we do a basic plan at the top of the page and we know exactly what the hook is. Okay, we know what they're trying to achieve, motivation of these workers at this time. So just answer the question. We then need to justify by bad-mouthing the other option in some ways. Taylor's theory might offer quicker boosts in productivity, but it's limited in scope regarding employee engagement and satisfaction, particularly with younger seasonal staff, context, who might value development opportunities and work-life balance more. That's back to the scheduling point. Especially to students who might want to progress into a retail management career. Okay, so through that bit in the end, they're students, they're at university or they're at college or they're in the sixth form, and maybe there's something that's more important than just getting some extra cash. You could have easily answered Taylor, by the way, and say that these people are focused on short-term monetary gains, topping up pay, and actually the money is the most important thing, so make sure you pay them a fair amount of money and give them some discount off some clothes or something. You know, so you could have used either of those. In the future, we know that this is a dynamic market, so let's bring it into our future-orientated MOPs. As the retail shifts increasingly online, we know this, we've done a case study on this, motivated staff can provide the exceptional service required to differentiate Next's in-store experience. Okay, so our conclusion is this is the best one at motivating staff. This is why it's better than Taylor, and this is why motivated staff are useful to Next. And there's a bit of context there because we've used something that we've not used in the answer, which is increasingly online. Okay, so you will notice the answer does not mention Maslow, Mayo or McGregor. It gets a bit lost in places and it starts talking about textbooky, but overall it does answer the question. I think it's level 4. You can decide where in level 4 it is. I don't think it's full marks, but hopefully that was useful. Now you go back, double mark your own work, look at your EBIs, compare and contrast your answer to my answer, and then see how you can improve, possibly both of them, not just yours, but see if you could cut some of the waffle out of this, see if you could focus it a little bit more, and have you got enough time to write this in 24 minutes? Well, you definitely haven't got enough time to write this in 10 minutes, so make sure you're managing your time throughout the paper. And remember, one of the hardest skills to practice this Easter is your timing per question and being brave and saying, I've used my time up on that question, I'm now moving on. Okay, hopefully that was useful, and happy days.